You've taken the steps to actually get your budget created, but now that you have, you realize that it just isn't working. Don't give up. The truth is, budgeting is not one size fits all. Budgeting is all about trial and error. You're not always going to be perfect with your budget. I mean, I'm a budget coach and I don't always get it right. That means you have permission to let your budget be a work in progress. However, there may be certain roadblocks that are holding your budget back from success. In this episode, I'm sharing a few common big signs your budget isn't working and what you can do next. Once you know the signs, you can actively work to fix them. Before we dive in, I want you to know something. The fact that you have created a budget is half the battle, so please give yourself some credit. If you don't have a budget already, I want you to listen to episode 3, Breaking Through the Stigma of Budgeting, and get yourself a plan in place ASAP. I have a free monthly budget overview tracker that I'll link to in the show notes. You can start there. Or I create budget plans for my clients. So if you want a custom budget plan created for you and your situation by someone who knows a thing or two about budgeting, please don't hesitate to get started with that. It's all done through the City Girl Savings website, so I will link to that in the show notes as well. The point is, get a budget. We need a budget before we can do anything additional with our money. So let's dive into the major signs your budget isn't working and what you can do to fix it. So first big sign your budget is not working: unaccounted for expenses. So I'm sure you've heard of the zero-based budget, which is basically allocating all of your money down to zero. And it is fantastic to have a budget that allocates every last dime to each category. I use a zero-based budget. This is the method that I use to teach my clients and make sure that they know how to do it, but with a little flexibility. Because here's the thing. What happens when you have every last dime allocated, but something unplanned or unaccounted for comes up? Something that you did not intend to spend money on pops up. Usually when something like this happens and a person had all of their money allocated, this is when people give up. People tend to throw their budget down the drain with the mindset that, hey, it's already out the window anyways, so I'll just try again next month. No, that's not true. Please do not be this person anymore, because it's the bounce back that really matters. It's not the setback. But how are we going to prevent this from throwing you off in the future? Because if it happened once, it can happen again. And life is not always going to go according to plan. I've learned this lesson time and time again, and I want to stress it to you because it's just so true. So we now have to think a little bit more proactive instead of reactive. So like I said, by now, I think we all know that life happens and things will always come up that we don't plan for. So the best way to make sure that those unplanned expenses don't completely throw your budget out the window is to prepare for them. And I do understand that this sounds kind of counterintuitive, like plan for the unplanned, but hear me out because it makes sense. So one way we can essentially plan for the unplanned is to create a new category in your budget for miscellaneous expenses or emergency items. And I like to do this myself. So I have a category specifically in my budget called miscellaneous. I have a certain amount of money allocated to this miscellaneous category every month. If I don't use that money, it goes towards another category or it gets saved. So you can kind of follow the same process. Create a new category in your budget for miscellaneous expenses or one-off items. Have money set to the side for those things. And if you don't need that money that month, let it sit in a savings account. Let it accumulate in your checking account. This can help take the pressure off things coming up throughout the month. Now, I understand that something big may come up throughout the month, right? So yeah, maybe you allocate $100 to miscellaneous expenses every month, but something comes up for $500. Okay, So this is where we need a savings. So in addition to creating this category in your budget, and when you don't need that money, you put it in a savings account, I actually recommend creating an account just for unplanned expenses. I have stressed the importance of an emergency fund so many times, and this is why. You never know what will come up. So make it a little easier on yourself by including unexpected expenses in your budget via miscellaneous category, and or having a savings in place to handle those things that come up without impacting your other priorities. So we want to first make sure we add this category in our budget, allocate what you can afford to it on a monthly basis, but also we want to focus on having an emergency fund or an account just for unplanned expenses. And if we can constantly put money in this account or start this account with a lump sum, maybe 500, maybe 1,000, whatever you feel is best for your situation, it can help you when those unexpected things pop up. And trust me, they will. Moving on to the next big sign your budget isn't working. You're not tracking your spending. I know I've preached this on the show many times, but you truly can't know if your budget is working unless you're tracking your spending. Unless you're keeping an eye on everything that comes in and goes out of your accounts, you don't really know if you're sticking to the budget or not. Every time I work with a new money coaching client, one of the first things I do with them is introduce them to my spending tracker so that they can start monitoring where their money goes. It is a critical part of my coaching program, but it's also critical to budgeting in general. So if you have a budget, but you're not tracking your spending, I'm going to need you to start right away. And I even want to take a moment to talk about why everyone should start tracking their spending. So if you're not on the tracking bandwagon, here are a few reasons why you should start tracking your spending as soon as possible. So first, and probably most obvious reason, track to ensure you're following the budget. When you first start your expense tracking journey, the primary reason for doing so is to make sure that you're actually sticking to the budget. You're following the limits that you gave yourself in the budget. If you don't track your spending, you're not 100% sure where your money actually went. You may have a good idea, but that does not warrant control of your spending. Only knowledge warrants control. Another reason to track your spending is so you can track to see exactly where your money is going. If you track your spending and see that you are going over the limits you've set in your budget, now you can see exactly where you're overspending. Tracking allows you to see exactly where your money is going. So, did you overspend on food? Did you go shopping one too many times? You are now able to answer these questions and hopefully make some changes based on what you see. Another reason to track your spending is to break the paycheck to paycheck cycle. When you set a budget and track your spending, you are essentially taking control of your financial situation. You get to see exactly where your money is going, and you can consciously fix any spending overages. It's a game changer. Once you see where your money is going, you can start to break that dreaded paycheck to paycheck lifestyle because you can see, you know what? I'm spending too much in these categories, or I have these bills that I don't really need, or subscriptions that I don't use. If I can cancel some of these, if I can spend less in some of these areas, I can actually accumulate extra in my account so that I'm not at zero right before the next paycheck. So you can cut back things like dining out, shopping, activities, even for just a few weeks to build a buffer in your account. And by tracking your spending and referring to your budget, you should know exactly what you need in your account to break that cycle. Like I said, knowledge is power. Knowledge is what warrants the control of your money. Next reason to track your spending. Track so that you can set your priorities. Once you have your budget created, once you track your spending and you've broken the paycheck to paycheck cycle, you can set your priorities. Do you want to take an exotic trip next year? Do you want to buy a new car or a home? Now that you see where your money is going and fix any overspending, you can set some financial goals and priorities and actually start budgeting and saving for them. Instead of spending an extra $50 a month on food, you can open a new savings account for whatever goal you have and contribute monthly $50 to that account. Again, when you are in control of your money, you can give it a place to go that aligns with your longer term vision. And then the final reason to track your spending, track so that you can catch any questionable charges. I think a really important part of tracking your spending is that it allows you to keep a close eye on all of your charges, number one, but charges that take place on your credit card, debit card, or even cash. And as you are reviewing those charges, if you catch any noticeable transactions, questionable transactions, things that you actually didn't spend money on, you get to take the proper steps in the appropriate amount of time to get the answers you need and hopefully get your money back if something didn't go according to plan. Fees, for example, if your bank assesses a fee and you're not tracking your spending, you may have missed out on an opportunity to have that fee waived. Now, you will only be able to catch questionable charges or things that you really shouldn't have to pay if you're monitoring your accounts and tracking what you really did spend. So if your budget isn't working, the first question I'd ask is, where is your money going? And if you cannot answer that question, the problem likely isn't your budget, it's your spending. Okay, so you know the importance of tracking your spending, and you understand that a big sign your budget isn't working is you not tracking your spending. Let's talk about the next big sign your budget isn't working. Small, seemingly harmless purchases that add up. So sure, a $2 chapstick or a $1.99 download on iTunes certainly won't throw your budget off completely. However, if you consistently buy small, inexpensive items, it will add up and throw your budget off. Small purchases do add up. It's easy to convince yourself that $1.99 has no impact, but $1.99 20 times in a month can have an impact. So the mindset that, you don't think twice about buying low-cost items is contributing to your failed budget. So one place where low-cost spending can do major damage is food. If you are buying a $5 coffee here or a $3 snack there, but you're doing so on a regular basis, a lot of money could be going down the drain, especially if you are not sticking to the limits you set on your food spending. Also, it's especially easy to rack up small purchases when your credit card is linked to an app. Amazon, games that require tokens, and just in-app purchases make it extremely easy for people to buy what they need. Do yourself a favor and unlink your credit card from any instant purchase opportunities. Now, I do recognize that is how the system is designed to work, right? Like, buy now, one click, instant gratification. But it's so easy to make purchases without giving it a second thought, and that could result in you overspending. So before you get click happy or checkout line happy, take a few minutes to think about what you are about to buy. Do you really need it? Did you purchase something similar recently? Is it in your budget? If the items are accounted for in your budget, okay. But if they're not, proceed with caution, because you could be spending more on things that you didn't really plan for, and that means you're spending less on other things. So proceed with caution. Make sure you're not skipping the part where you track your purchases just because they're small. Okay, so even if you only spent $1.99 one day, make sure you're tracking it. And the final sign your budget isn't working, you are not giving yourself anything to enjoy life with. Now, I spent an entire episode on this topic. Check out episode 17, Why Your Budget Should Include the Things You Love, for the real breakdown. I will link to it in the show notes. But at the end of the day, A budget that is too restrictive ultimately leads you to splurging and likely undoing a lot of the progress you had previously made. So use your budget to determine how much to allocate to the things you love. We always want to make sure we're including the things that we enjoy, things that bring us happiness. We just have to do it in a way that allows for our other priorities and our goals to be taken care of as well. So it does not have to be an extreme amount going to these things, but indulging in moderation does set you up for long-term success. So if any of the signs I shared today apply to your budget, that could be a major indicator of why it's not working for you. Make some adjustments and see how that helps to move your budget forward. Now, before we wrap, I need to tell you that the Money Management Mastery Program is here. It is coming very, very soon. The doors are open. I'm sure you've heard this, but the Money Management Mastery is my 8-week live group coaching and online course that helps women learn how to master the money they make. And that includes budgeting. I take you through how to create a budget, and I share the exact spending tracker I use for myself and my clients. But we also cover things like mindset, monitoring and tracking your spending, handling budget setbacks, setting money goals, and so much more. I open this program one time per year, and that time is now. So join the program or learn more at mmm.citygirlsavings.com/money management mastery, and I will make sure to link to it in the show notes. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I will see you next week.